Hello and welcome to the Dr. Maria Show, July 16th, 2025. It's amazing to me that in the last several months, there's been public concern raised about President Joe Biden's cognitive decline during his tenure. What? You're just now raising questions? Some of us have been screaming about it since we saw him on the campaign trail in 2019. He was markedly, and I'm telling you from my own personal observation as a clinical provider, he was markedly changed from when he left the White House as vice president, and I only saw it getting worse. And through his time as president, I saw less and less of him. And I say I, making it very personal, but we, the people, saw less and less of the president. His vacation days were unprecedented. Now, post his administration, some books have come out and point out his cognitive decline and that there was a cover-up. I always try to put myself in somebody else's shoes. And I was thinking, say I was Joe Biden's provider, and I really believed he could not perform his duties as president of the United States. And as a matter of fact, because his cognitive decline was so severe, he may even be a danger to the presidency. What would I do? Because we're bound by HIPAA laws, privacy laws. We're not supposed to discuss our patients' conditions unless we have permission. Some people do give providers permission to go and talk to the public if it's a celebrity. What would I do? The president and his family probably wouldn't want me to talk about his decline, but I would be faced with a deep ethical dilemma. And I know myself very well. I know my strengths and I know my weaknesses. I know what I would have done. I would have gone to Congress. I would have had to for them to enact the 25th Amendment. I'm not just saying that because I'm sitting behind a camera and there's no consequences for me to say this. I just, sometimes you're very confident in your strengths and weaknesses. And as a leader and a confident professional, I know myself. I know I did not accept when providers were impaired. There was a thing that we had in the medical field, in hospitals or private practice. You covered for them. You hoped they got help, but they never got disciplined. Sometimes a hospital would fire a physician or somebody that's, takes care of patients, a nurse, and they would still give them a good reference just to get rid of them. That is very well known in our industry. I never did that. Never. Not only did I immediately remove a impaired provider from taking care of patients, I reported them to the board of whether it was a board of medicine, board of nursing, and I would never give them a reference. As a matter of fact, I would be candid. And everybody's afraid of being sued. I can't live my life like that. I have to stand true to being a patient advocate. And if you say you're a patient advocate, you have to stand true. You cannot let a provider who may not have even been in successful recovery go to another hospital and perhaps perform surgery or anesthesia or whatever their specialty is. So I was always different than it seemed like a lot of my CEOs. So I know myself. And I absolutely see where it's a dilemma, though. I can see because of HIPAA and privacy, we're not supposed to talk about our patients. I have, to this day, very high-level patients, private patients. I don't go and talk about their issues. They should take my license if I did that. But when it's the presidency, It kind of reminds me of that impaired provider. You have to stand up for the patients. I would have had to stand up for my country because who was running the government? And that's the question right now put before us. Thankfully, because of Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee and others saying, there's more and more evidence. People are starting to come forward saying, please don't say my name, but I was a cabinet member, and through time, I had less and less access to the president. And I would get memos from different people saying the president wants this or that. I don't even know if the president was aware of the orders. So now we're starting to look into it. President Trump did ask for an investigation. This is not retaliation. This is not about two different parties at odds. This is about getting clarification of a presidency, always to look and decipher what happened so we make sure it won't happen again. You've heard me talk about incident command. As a CEO of a hospital, we would have incident commands during all kinds of problems, whether it was you were out of water or multiple traumas or gunshots in your hospital. You would have incident command, and you would have what's called after action reports. And it wasn't meant to belittle anybody. You would sit around a table and say, okay, what worked well? What didn't work well? What do we put in so that gap that happened, that communication gap that people didn't know where the shooter was in the hospital, how do we make it better the next time? So that is the spirit, I believe, of the Trump administration. And that would be the spirit of how I would be president. And it wouldn't matter if somebody was, a particular party, Republican, Libertarian, Democrat. I would always want to hold people accountable, but also have it in the spirit of so these problems in our government never occur again. So now people are starting to talk. The main subject right now is about the auto pen. Who really gave approval? Now, President Biden recently did an interview, and I'm told he put a very strict, or his people put a very strict time limit, 10 minutes max, you can talk to me, where he says he was aware of all the pardons. Some really bright people did the math to that. There were so many pardons, especially at the end. And as president, right, you're putting your name to something. Wouldn't you want to look at the file? So just putting some average times to look at each case, he wouldn't have had time. We know he hardly worked. He was hardly in the White House. Hell, they had a fake Oval Office stage for him. Now, I have a source that told me that was so they could control everything, but it was in the White House. I shouldn't say I doubt it. I wonder about that. I'm concerned about that intel. It makes more sense if it was in his home, right? Because he didn't come into the office because they didn't want people running into him. So that's a whole other subject. I'm a little concerned about Representative Coomer running this. He ran another investigation about Joe Biden in the corruption with selling his VP seat, how much money he got from China, Ukraine, all kinds of different countries, but especially communist China. And he failed to really take it to the end. He was a real big disappointment, and he's the main person running this investigation. But like I said, there are several cabinet members who are now saying, we couldn't even get to him. We don't know what he thought. Now, interestingly enough, oh, by the way, they're putting some figures to this because so Joe Biden, I was never a fan, right? I never thought he was a very bright person. this is my language. I thought he was a shyster, right? You're endearing yourself on people to be funny, to be a friend to all. And that certainly was his reputation. A lot of people said when he was a senator, he was a great Joe to go out for a drink with. He was a lot of fun. But I never took him as a serious or an intellectual man, my opinion. But he was always moderate. If you look back his whole time he was a senator, which was a very long time, that's why we need term limits, he was always a pretty moderate guy. Even as vice president. Remember, he and Obama, same administration, they deported many, many more people than President Trump has so far. We hope for more deportations, especially the bad actors. Okay. All of a sudden, he becomes president of the United States, and he's this radical lefty. It never made sense to me. I'm like, someone else is whispering in this guy's ear. Someone else is making the decisions. Now, a lot of people would point to President Obama, right? Because of that very famous 60-minute interview where President Obama said, you know what my fantasy, my dream would be, okay, I'm out of the White House, but I would still control it with like these little earpieces so I could tell the person what to do. So everybody assumes President Obama, and he never really left Washington after his administration. So yes, maybe so. Maybe President Obama had a lot of sway. They are saying that Jill Biden and Hunter Biden almost always were in very high level meetings. There's literally a picture on Jill Biden's, I don't know if it was X or Facebook. I may have it wrong. So it's a social media post. Jill Biden, obviously on Air Force One, all these documents in front of her, looking very serious, preparing for G7. Okay, why would the President of the United States' wife, not an elected official, need to be preparing for G7? But it's well known now. This is not me giving my opinion, which I'm an opinion show. This is factual that Jill Biden or Hunter Biden seem to be really at the forefront of most meetings. But they say Jill Biden had a chief of staff who was fiercely loyal to her. So much so that I don't know if it was her herself, meaning Dr. Jill Biden, or somebody else in the media had dubbed him her work husband. And I've heard this term before. You know, you spend a lot of time at work and you have close professional relationships. So I have heard that term before. But here is Mr. Burnell coming in to testify in front of Congress today.
Will you answer any questions today, or will you come to the fifth? We have to New York Times piece that your former President Biden gave the New York Times.
Now, his name is Anthony Burnell. You can't go by how somebody looks, but I often say, well, that person like John Brennan looks evil, right? There's a look in someone's eye, right? The old adage, the eyes are the window to the soul. This guy does not look like a good guy, right? I knew in his stance, right? He's tense. He's walking. I'm in a mission. He was not going to tell the truth. I knew it, even though it is our constitutional right to plead the fifth. It does make you look guilty. It does. I'm never going to lie to you, but it is his right to do it. But why can't, what do you want, a career in politics? For once, people, I want to shake you. I want the investigators like Comer to say, please take off your Democrat hat. Take off your Republican hat. Let's just be honest. This is your legacy, Anthony Burnell. Your legacy to tell the truth. Forever you will be known in history of telling the truth. Wouldn't that be a wonderful thing? And I'm thinking that they actually need to try to appeal to the ethical, the moral, the right thing to do side of these witnesses, but he did plead the fifth. Interestingly enough, Project Veritas, right? Veritas meaning truth in Latin. They get a lot of information. Sometimes I feel like they're not given enough credit because they exposed Planned Parenthood for, oh, this is disgusting, but selling body parts of aborted fetuses. And they tried to deny it, but it was on film. Their staff telling the investigator this. Well, here is another undercover clip here. Clip one.
Yes, nice to meet you. Yeah. Off the record, of course.
Foundational question for me is how corrupt is the DNC if so many people knew, or few people knew about Biden? Well, the president of the United States.
I mean, I think the fact of the matter is the DNC is always going to be a campaign arm of the president, ultimately. The bigger issue was the inner circle that was around Biden. That's it.
And I can't stress to you enough.
Joe Biden's chief of staff. Had an enormous amount of power.
Joe Biden?
Joe Biden's chief of staff.
That was an open secret at that point. I would avoid him. He was scary.
What was his name?
Anthony Trump.
I've never seen him.
Exactly.
What do you mean?
He's just he's a shadowy, Wizard of Oz type figure. That's what made him so I knew how he looked, but the general public wouldn't know how this man looked. But he wielded an enormous amount of power, and I can't stress to you how much power he had at the White House.
I do encourage you to look up Project Veritas and look at what they have uncovered. It's uncovering the truth for me and you. Dear Lord. So we're never, ever going to get the truth out of Dr. Jill Biden. Again, putting myself in someone else's shoes. We're talking about her husband's legacy. We will never get an ounce of truth. Some people are saying she has engaged in elder abuse. She needs to be held accountable. I think that's a dead end. And I'm one that never wants to back down from holding anybody accountable. I feel like we've gotten too soft, especially when it comes to government officials. Oh, you know what? I'm going to let this go because, when we're in power, we don't want them going after us. I would say, come after me if I'm doing something wrong. Of course, I would never do anything wrong, but we've become very soft on both sides, and it's it's defining the deviancy down. Look up that very scholarly article. By the way, I can't recall the man off the top of my head that coined that phrase, and it was with crime, right? The more we keep saying, okay, well, you can steal up to $900. We're defining the deviancy down instead of saying stealing is stealing, whether it's one piece of candy or not. That didn't belong to you. We've done that morally, ethically, that our government officials get away with everything, and we got to stop it. We've put our eggs to get this done into the Republicans. And sometimes the Republicans are now disappointing. They're not moving fast enough. They're not holding the people accountable enough. And I know these things take time. And believe me, there's so much that Kash Patel and Pam Bondi had to uncover. We have missing children through that southern border, 300,000 presumed to be in sex trafficking or labor trafficking rings. We have terrorist cells in our country. We have cartel running our cities. We have a lot going on, so I get it. And sometimes you have to spend to reduce. So I am all about a small government. I believe our forefathers wrote the Constitution, designed our government for checks and balances, and also to be as small and tight as possible to avoid corruption. I call it a beast. I call our federal government the beast, not President Trump's limo, the beast, but the beast of the federal government. And the bigger it got, the more they would want to tax you to make it bigger and keep it sustained, right? There's committees that never go away. But sometimes in order to right side a very wrong track we were on, we may have to get temporary investigators in, private investigators, maybe people from the private sector, make them almost like Elon Musk was a temporary government employee. Let's do this with some investigators to start moving this needle of accountability. Again, I call for it, not out of any vengeful thing, although I should be mad as an American citizen. Absolutely, I should be. That the Nancy Pelosi's and the Elizabeth Warrens of our government has made millions and millions of dollars, whether it's insider trading or, contracts to people getting kickbacks. It is not normal to have the wealth that we've seen. And by the way, it's not just the elected officials. Anthony Fauci became a multi-millionaire for being a doctor in the federal government. You don't think he got kickbacks from Pfizer, Moderna, and any other thing he put his dirty little hands on? Yeah, I'm telling you. So we'll see where this stuff goes. But here's my advice to President Trump. Please start looking at, sometimes you got to spend more to get to your final thing, and then we can shrink everything down. But there's so much, right? One administration is not going to get to all the corruption, all the bad things that happen to we, the people. So we may need to hire these temporary employees. And I have to tell you, I can almost guarantee that people will take a pay cut, a temporary pay cut from their private lives, their private companies, to help the federal government. They certainly couldn't work for free. Most people can't. But, and I wouldn't mind my tax dollars having more investigators checking out potential terrorists, looking at the background of elected officials. And I don't care what party they belong to. You know, did they come in making their $150,000 a year and their spouse is a stay-home spouse or makes the same money, but yet they are gazillionaires? And I get it. You may have made great investments. Maybe you're very good with your money. But the odds are there's such a big percentage of elected officials that are god-awful rich that are suspicious. So we'll see where this goes. Back to the auto pen. So the last chief of staff of President Biden, Jeff Zients, is saying that he issued the final approval for multiple high-profile pardons, and that it went through committee, and the committee approved, and it was passed on to the staff to use the auto pen. Well, there's a lot of things we can poke holes there as well. You know, President Biden's saying a lot of things were by word of mouth. What? Something as important as this, you don't have some documents to it? We may not agree with the pardons, but there should be backup. It shouldn't be word of mouth. And the lowly staffer who used the auto pen, yes, I get it. You probably felt intimidated to say, I need to hear from the president himself before I use the auto pen. I don't know. Somehow we got to encourage young people that yes, you do, or whether you're not so young, that yes, you do say you can't move forward without talking to the president on something as important as the use. That's like saying his signature, that he's aware. But again, that's a big, big cover up. So we'll see what comes from this. We do have a little footage of President Biden signing some orders. You know, clip 3, we can see him there. We don't know what that is. That could be executive orders. It looks like that's what that is. It doesn't look necessarily like pardons. As you could tell with President Trump, they come out with these big packets. And again, I don't even know if here with the executive orders, he really knows what he's signing. I called this out his entire presidency, and I'm not the only one. Many, many common sense Americans were very concerned that this man, Joe Biden, was not running the government. And by the way, was he really elected? There is going to be a big investigation into the 2020 election. And may I say, yes, you heard it here. Rudy Giuliani was right. They tried to destroy that man because he had information on Joe Biden. Number one, corruption before the 2020 election. And he didn't even want anything to do with it. He says, I got this information. I'll give it to Bill Barr. Bill Barr, former CIA, deep state, buried it. So we asked, Rudy Giuliani's of the world, do the right thing, man. And he does. And Bill Barr, covers it up. And then he just fell on his lap. Pam Bondi and Corey Lewandowski called him to go to Pennsylvania, said they're not allowing Republican poll watchers to observe any ballots. And it even went to court. I believe Corey Lewandowski went to court. Rudy Giuliani was right about all that. And he didn't even get into the machines. That was, some other people on his staff, Sidney Powell and others. Mike Lindell really dove into, because all of our electronic machines can, not saying that they were, but can be accessed through the internet. But Rudy really concentrated on mail-in ballots and those types of fraud and not allowing the poll watchers to really do their job. So there'll be a big investigation, but maybe this man should have never been president to begin with. And we have to secure our elections. Have to. What else happened? Syria. What is going on in Syria? It seemed like, okay, we have a ceasefire between Israel and Gaza and Israel and Iran. Okay, good steps, right? Israel always has to be on guard, though. They're such a small country who's been abused repeatedly for decades and decades, but there's a ceasefire, all good. We're all happy with that. And all of a sudden, Israel bombs Syrian headquarters today. So here you can see the results of some of that. There were some deaths to this. They had launched air attacks on the Syrian Defense Ministry and near the presidential palace in the capital of Damascus, killing at least 3 and wounding 34. And the strikes do come after Israel threatened to increase attacks if Syrian government forces are not withdrawn from the south of the country, where there has been fighting between Druze and security forces. Well, what are the Druze? It is a group of people who are Jews. This is the best of my knowledge. They're, I believe they're Orthodox, and they've been threatened by this now leader of Syria, Jolani. Well, remember Jolani? Yeah, that's him right there. He is an Al-Qaeda person. He developed his own, shall I say, sect of Al-Qaeda. Brutal guy, killed Americans. And he now puts on a suit, changed his name a little bit. Oh, and by the way, we had a huge bounty on his head. Whatever happened to that? So now all of a sudden, the Trump administration is saying, oh, well, he promises to be a peaceful guy and not do any harm. I don't know if you could ever change someone's stripes when their values are so deep seated in hate, anti-Semitism. I don't know. It'd be a work of the good Lord above if he was to change. That would be great, but we don't see evidence of that. Let's look at clip 4. Why would they take this man and shave off his mustache? Why? It's to humiliate him. So here is a Druze person. And, they wear, he's cutting his lip. I just can't stand this. So they, are trying to humiliate him. They also did this to an old man. I think we have a clip of that as well. But I want to talk about Jolani and what he founded. He founded Jabhat al-Nusra, JN, which was an Al-Qaeda affiliate in Syria in likely 2011. He potentially could have been, a little bit earlier. But right now we're saying he formed it in 2011. And they publicly came out and said, we're an official group. That was in 2012. Don't mess with us. Were definitely an extremist, terribly destructive group. Now, the terrorist attacks that were linked to them, I'll tell you. In its first year of operation, JN was involved in nearly 600 attacks, including, because they're zealots, remember that. They're not based sometimes in common sense, but including 40 suicide bombings. Can you imagine that you believe so much in something that you will blow yourself up along with blowing up human lives, innocent, mainly human lives. We're not talking about in war, like our Revolutionary War. Sometimes you have to fight to the death to get to the other side. This was terrorism. In January of 2013, this group carried out a suicide attack on a military base in Syria, claimed responsibility in February of 2013 for suicide attacks on regime targets in Damascus. Again, 2013, claimed responsibility for 2 suicide attacks targeting a bridge and bunker near Homs. Jolani himself was named as the Supervisor General for Jabhat al-Nusra in May of 2012. And that he says they are responsible for all these attacks. And many attacks were carried out under Jolani's regime, per se. So what he's doing now is he's attacking Christians, and they say that since Assad's outing, that over 1,000 Christians have been murdered. And these Druze, D-R-U-Z-E, of Jewish descent, I don't know a lot about it, to tell you the God's honest truth. I do know they are a minority living in southern Syria, and that there's been clashes between the Druze militias and the Bedouin tribes in Syria, and that hundreds of people have been killed. They're being humiliated. They're being oppressed openly. And Israel said those are our people too. They're Jewish. So stop it. A lot of people are calling on President Trump to get involved, not to bomb Syria, but to call Jolani and say, listen, buddy, you stop going after Christians and Jews. Okay, here's the dilemma, right? Here's what everybody says. We voted Trump in because we have a guy who's anti-war, does not take any kind of direction from the military complex, the very misguided military complex. Why should we get involved if, Israel is our partner. I know Secretary Marco Rubio is on the phone now trying to get some kind of peace going there. But the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights reported at least 203 deaths, including 93 Druze, 93 security personnel, and 18 Bedouins. So I hope this stops. I hope that people aren't being slaughtered because of their religious background. But this guy never trusted him. He's so bad. We had such a big bounty on his head. Just look, he was being asked about 9/11, and just look what he had to say.
يكذب عليك أي شخص يعيش في العالم الإسلامي أو الوطن العربي إذا قال لك أنه لم يكن سعيد في ذاك الوقت.
So the person was saying, this was a bad thing. Innocent people. Again, this wasn't war where you're typically military person against military person. These people went directly for innocent people, deliberately, very much deliberately. And he didn't care. And he's saying, we would be lying if we said we weren't happy. He's not regretful. He went on in that interview. He never said, we were misguided. This was awful. We shouldn't have done it. We shouldn't have cheered. No, none of that. He hates us. He really does. And right now, I think he's laughing, saying, I kind of fooled everybody. I changed my name. I put on a nice suit. Look at me. I'm a great guy. Well, Benjamin Netanyahu sees right through him. I don't know. I don't pretend to have all the facts of what's happening there, but it's something that you would think in this day and age that there shouldn't be any ethnic cleansing. Now, again, I have to thank President Trump on this for getting involved in Africa. We've seen tribes, especially between the Democratic Congo and Rwanda, ethnic cleansing. And, Trump helped make a peace agreement. So that's really good. So we'll have to keep an eye on what's going to happen in Syria. But this guy's a bad guy. He really is. And the people of Syria deserve better. I'm going to take a short break. And when I come back, we got to talk about the infamous guy from Minnesota who killed 3 people.
Whether it's being a weekend warrior or spending time with your family, feeling your best is the key to doing the things you love. That's why I'm excited to tell you about Nirvanta. It's a natural solution designed to help you stay active and live well naturally. Nirvanta is a topical blend of all natural essential oils like frankincense, myrrh, and a proprietary gold standard plant stock extract. It's perfect for your hands, feet, knees, back, or anywhere else that needs a little extra care. Use Nirvanta proactively as part of your daily maintenance routine, and you're guaranteed you're going to feel the difference. Simply massage Nirvanta in for at least 60 seconds, 2 to 3 times a day to get the best results. And if you're not completely satisfied, you get your money back. No questions asked. There's simply no risk and no reason not to try Nirvanta today. Right now, you get 15% off with code Lindell exclusively at nirvantahealth.com. So stop reaching out for that medicine cabinet. Get Nirvanta instead and experience the difference. Go to nirvantahealth.com. Use code Lindell to get 15% off today. Nirvanta Health. Live well naturally.
Remember Vance Bolter in Minnesota pretended to be law enforcement and murdered 2 politicians. One of the politicians, Melissa Hortman, killed her husband as well. There's these innocent people. There he is. A security camera caught him. He's got a lot of technical gear on. A lot of misinformation per se on the internet that is saying that he was a Trump supporter or this had to do because he didn't like abortion. He claims more information is going to come out if the government was brave enough to let the information out. Let's look at clip 8.
Well, there's some news. Federal charges against Vance Belter and the killing of House Speaker in Minnesota, Melissa Hortman, and her husband. Amazing police work after the shooting at the Hoffman residence. Police just proactively thought to go to a wellness check at the Hortman home, and that is where they encountered the suspect, who is now charged counts 1 and 2 with stalking. This is on the federal level. Counts 3 and 4 murder charges that are death penalty eligible. Not at the state level, but now these federal charges make him death penalty eligible. Nicole Parker, a source at DOJ, told me that this U.S. attorney for Minnesota, we've been watching, Joe Thompson, he's been in the FBI command center with his entire team when this crime occurred. The entire weekend, he has not once gone home. Federal law enforcement from top to bottom has been on this. And the Trump administration in particular, they say this speaks to their involvement to get federal charges this quickly.
Absolutely crucial in this investigation. When I initially saw the news break, we don't know all of the facts, we don't know all of the evidence, but we knew obviously that there were going to be local charges. I cannot tell you how important it is that we have President Trump in the office and that we have Pam Bondi, the Attorney General she is head of Department of Justice, and they are not going to let him get away with anything. He obviously has been charged on the local level, but these additional counts on the federal level, he is going to face those first. And they will be working these investigations simultaneously. It doesn't mean that the local charges go away. Those murder charges do not go away. But again, Title 18 U.S. Code 2261, stalking charges, Title 18 924J, murder using a firearm, which you mentioned is death penalty eligible. This administration, they will go for the death penalty. And that is what this individual deserves. What he did is sick. It is evil. I do not care what side of the political spectrum you stand on. No form of political violence is okay. No form of violence, period, is okay in our country. And I am so glad to see that they are being very, very aggressive, and he will be held accountable.
That is former press secretary Kayleigh McEnany talking about, she was going to go on to talk about violence, political violence. We've seen it. This show, the Dr. Maria show, has covered how, and it seems to be mainly on the Democrat side. I'm going to be honest with you. It's the Democrats who typically call for violence, blood on the streets, go after ICE. Someone needs to take a bullet for the cause, whatever. Their rhetoric has been so divisive and hateful and violent, and they've got to call a stop to it. It's got to come from within. But this wackadoodle, this Minnesota guy, he wrote this really unhinged letter to Kash Patel. And I'll read a little bit to you. Dear Kash Patel, my name is Dr. Vance Luther Bolter. I am the shooter at large in Minnesota. He went on to claim he had been hired by U.S. military people off the books since his college days and has gone to work on line of duty missions across the world. Recently, I was approached about a project that Tim Walz wanted done. Tim Walz wanted me to kill Amy Klobuchar and Tina Smith. Tim wants to be a senator, he claimed, referring to Minnesota's U.S. senators. Elsewhere in the ramblings, he alleged, I told Tim I want nothing to do with it, and if he didn't call off that plan, I would go public. The note, which was first reported on last month in the wake of his arrest, was found in his abandoned SUV at the crime scene after he allegedly gunned down Hortman and her husband. Bolter allegedly shot State Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette earlier that day, but they miraculously survived. So I do want to say, I am so glad they survived, but I forgot that the politician did survive. So I said earlier 3 people were shot. Yes, 4 people were shot, 2 died, 2 survived. So is this the rambling of a madman? Is he something we created? We know the CIA often uses people. We know they were involved in hallucinogenics during Vietnam. Our CIA and our FBI, for that matter, do not have a good track record, especially the CIA, right? They're kind of the secret police. They're not supposed to get involved in domestic issues, but we unleash them and God knows what they're doing. So there'll be further investigation into this. So I was just scrolling, looking for kind of different topics, because most of the topics I talk about, you're going to get them on other news channels, maybe not with my opinion. So I hope you always tune in for some news here, but you may get more in-depth news through probably not news stations, but podcasts. But I was looking and I found a very interesting little story here, and it's clip 9.
No, please don't beg me. She's in an advanced state of pregnancy. It's quite common for pregnant ladies to travel overseas so that they can have the baby in whichever country to automatically get that passport. What's your final destination today?
No, today.
Today?
Today in London.
Okay.
But I'm going to the US tomorrow.
You're going to the US tomorrow, okay. When you went for your American visa, did you tell the visa officer that you were pregnant? No. You didn't? No. Okay. Is there any reason why you didn't tell the visa officer that you were pregnant?
It didn't come up.
It didn't come up. Okay, what I'm going to do is...
The woman is only 7 weeks away from giving birth, yet has decided to visit her sister in America, claiming she will return 3 weeks before her due
It says
date.
that you're fit to travel. Babies born in the UK don't automatically qualify for a British passport, but babies born in the US do automatically qualify for an American passport. So it's quite common for pregnant ladies to travel overseas so that they can have the baby in whichever country to automatically get that passport.
Sarah is suspicious of the woman's motive for travelling to the US via the UK, but she could also be in breach of airline regulations for travelling whilst pregnant.
When is she due?
5th of June,
When is her return?
16th of May. So she's got 3 weeks between her return date and her due date, which makes her 37 weeks pregnant, which is over every airline's limit.
The woman is in breach of the airline's policy, but as she has a valid US visa, Sarah must now contact the US Embassy.
Hi, it's Sarah. I'm at the airport at the moment. I just wondered if you could give a call to the American Embassy so that they can check an American visa for me. She's at the airport today and she's in an advanced state of pregnancy. So if you can just give them a call and find out if they're happy with that, and if so, then we can let her travel.
It's minutes before the flight leaves, but whether or not the pregnant woman will be on board is up to the US Embassy.
Right, okay, all right, I'll do that then. Okay, thanks very much. All right, thank you, bye-bye.
She's not good.
Okay, that was the American Embassy and they want to speak to her today.
The flight will be leaving without the pregnant woman. Now Sarah must tell her the news.
So what I've done is I've contacted the visa man and explained your situation. What he'd like to do is can you go back to the embassy here in Lagos, show him all this paperwork, and he'll want to speak to you. I'm sorry, I know it's frustrating, but if you can go back to him, because Madam,
Please,
Madam,
please, I'm begging.
No, please don't beg me. Please don't beg me. No, Madam, please don't beg me.
People that are pregnant that do go and all that.
The pregnant woman did not make it to the USA. When she failed to turn up at the American Embassy, her visa was cancelled.
So this I found interesting because we've long heard that people come into the United States to have a baby because the baby is now an American citizen. I was an executive in a hospital in Tennessee, and certainly that happened a lot there too, from Mexico. Typically it was Mexicans who crossed illegally just to deliver their babies. So I knew it was going on. I don't know the numbers, but this clip clearly shows that this person was trying to get here in time to deliver a baby. And thanks to this agent for really picking it up. Now, isn't it interesting that the UK does not have that in their constitution, but we do in America? And I can kind of understand why we do, right? Because we are America. We are that melting pot. But we also don't want to be used because who knows the background of these women? they too can be terrorists. It's not just men. So I just thought you would find that little clip interesting. So we've long said that some of these really violent protests that we saw, remember the 2020 protest? Now, somehow, politicians and the media made you believe that Floyd was a good guy who died by the hands of a police officer. I'm not going to get too much into that, but that was totally a lie. Police officer did not kill this guy. He died of an overdose. That was proven by his autopsy. But anyways, and he was also a criminal. Not that he deserved to die. But anyways, you were told a big whopping lie. But remember all those protests and people were saying, wait a minute, we see people being bussed in. They're not from this community. Or we see people planting bricks along a protest route or other things to really get the police to react, right? If you have somebody throwing a brick at your head or throwing Molotov cocktails at you, you're going to respond, right? And then they can film just the police action against the crowd. And we've often said these are paid people, like the paid people we saw stuffing boxes during the 2020 election. But I want you to see this clip 10.
Press credentials.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so who are you with?
I'm right now I am representing myself, and I'm representing the folks at Rise and Resist who have been trained
so Rise
to
and
be
Resist.
marshals.
How much do they pay you to wear this vest?
Absolutely nothing.
Really? So I did some digging, and the woman trying to stop my interview is named Karen Shaw. She is a professional protester. I found her at almost 100 different protests. Let's look at her portfolio, shall we? Here's her outside Trump Tower saying TikTok time's up. Here's her saying ban guns, not drag. Amazing. This is her telling us that lies have consequences. She is also very passionate about abortion. Even in the video right now, she's just wearing a hat that says abortion on it.
Nate, she's made a career out of this.
Yeah. Yep. This is her second job, actually. So she's an associate director at Lincoln Center in New York City, which is a very prominent theater. It's beautiful theater, but she's all over the country, touring the country, protesting. And I just knew that that was going to be the case because no one behaves like that for free. I just refuse to believe that.
Yeah, and so you kept on, let's just say, your research. You kept on examining it, and there's a whole.
Well, as you can see, and I could show you more of that, but I do appreciate him doing the work. This person is a paid professional. There's many, many more like that. Does she really even believe in this rhetoric, or is it just for the coin? I don't know. But she came across initially, oh, this sweet little thing. I'm not paid to wear this vest. So thank you to that young man. Well, I want to end with some wisdom from Denzel Washington, because we do want to have a better society, a safer society, and have our children be from loving homes. Listen to what Denzel had to say.
I think it's more important to make headway in our own house. By the time the system comes into play, the damage is done. They're not locking up 7-year-olds. I was in Chicago, and we saw these little kids on bikes with masks on the side of their head, 5 or 6 of them. And the driver said, yeah, they're little yummies. I said, who? Google Lil Yummy. Lil Yummy was an 11-year-old murderer. And you look at his picture, you'll see the headshot of him, and he's like this. And he got murdered at 11 by a 14-year-old who's doing life now, and a 16-year-old. You blame the system? Where was his father? It starts in the house. It starts in the home. And yeah, well, my father got locked up. Well, where was his father? I did talk about my 3 closest friends, and they did, 15 to 25. One did 28, this and that. I was the only one of the 3 that had a father in my life, even though my parents were together. But I still had a father who was a gentle man and a good example. They didn't. We can blame the system if we want, but they didn't lock any of us up at 7. My parents sent me in another direction.
Well, in the 1970s, when professionals weren't afraid of being woke, they were just calling out sociology type subjects. They noted that the Black family was eroding and the father was missing in the home. So Denzel, thank you for calling it out and pointing it out. Every man should take care of their child, just like every woman should take care of their child. Just saying. Thank you for joining me. I hope to see you on Friday night.